For years, I told myself I could handle it, that I could live with the weight, the lies, the cracks papered over by polite smiles and carefully staged family photos. I thought maybe, just maybe, I could hold my family together. For my daughter. For the image. For the illusion. But illusions have a way of shattering at the worst possible moment. It was a late afternoon when the whole damn facade finally collapsed. The house was too quiet, that kind of unnatural stillness you only notice when you know something's about to snap. My daughter, Emily, had been pacing upstairs, angry. Furious, really. And I could hear her muffled voice from the top of the stairs before it suddenly crescendoed into a scream that cut straight through my chest. You ruined her life because of your stupid betrayal 20 years ago. Her words hit me like a whip across my face. But I stood there, calm, steady. I didn't flinch. I didn't answer. Instead, I reached into my jacket pocket and pulled out the manila envelope. The one I had been holding onto for days, maybe weeks, waiting for this exact moment. The DNA results. I walked toward her slowly, her face twisted with rage, confusion, and something else, fear. Without a word, I held out the papers. She hesitated at first, but snatched them from my hand. Her eyes darted across the top lines where the names were printed in bold, undeniable black ink. Then she read the result, 0% probability of paternity. Her lips parted slightly. The color drained from her face. The fire in her eyes flickered as reality rearranged itself behind them. She froze, completely paralyzed by what the paper revealed. The father she had been defending wasn't her biological father. I didn't need to say anything. The truth had spoken for itself. And so I did what I had rehearsed in my head so many times before. I turned around. No words. No anger. No further explanations. Just silence. I walked away from her, leaving her standing there, still clutching the papers that now weighed heavier than any argument she had ever prepared. As I stepped out the front door, the warm breeze of early evening hit my face, but it didn't feel like freedom. Not yet. What I felt was the cold satisfaction of long overdue justice finally breaking the dam that had held it back for 2 decades. 20 years ago, my wife thought she could hide her betrayal under the rug, hoping time would erase the evidence. She was wrong. Time didn't bury the truth. Time only sharpened it like a blade. And now, it had finally cut. You want to know the worst part? It wasn't the affair itself. It was living 2 decades in a house built on lies while everyone else wore their masks like professionals. And me? I played the fool. Or at least that's what they thought. 20 years ago, I was just another man who believed too much in vows. I married Claire because I loved her simple, stupid, pure love. We had built what I thought was a respectable life, a good home, a steady job, one beautiful daughter, Emily, who became my entire world. But Claire, she had different ideas. I didn't know it then. I didn't see it. She was pregnant not long after our wedding, almost too soon, but I chalked it up to life moving fast. The timing should have raised a flag, but love blinds you. I was busy working, building a future, securing the kind of stable life my own father never could give me. But behind my back, the rot had already begun. The whispers started small, subtle absences, unexplainable late nights, half-hearted excuses about old friends and last-minute work obligations. When you trust someone, you make excuses for them. That's what I did, like an idiot. Every business trip, every late meeting, every carefully rehearsed speech about career advancement. The truth? She had been sleeping with someone else. A man she once called an old friend from college. Harmless, she said. Platonic, she swore. The same man who, coincidentally, had always hovered around the edges of our lives like a vulture waiting for its chance. I didn't confront her then. Confrontation would have brought only more lies. I waited. I watched. And over the years, I built my own little fortress of evidence. Quiet. Patient. Methodical. The DNA test was my ace. For 2 decades, I raised Emily as my own. My daughter. My flesh and blood, I thought. I sacrificed for her. I lost sleep for her. I shaped my whole world around giving her the best future I could offer. And all the while, the truth sat like a loaded gun in the back of my mind, waiting for the day I would finally pull the trigger. And then today, it came. Her words echoed in my head as I stood in the driveway after handing her those results. You ruined her life because of your stupid betrayal 20 years ago. No, sweetheart. I didn't ruin her life. Your mother did. She did the moment she let that man into her bed, into her life, and ultimately into your bloodstream. The betrayal was hers. But let's be clear. I'm not playing victim here. No. Victims whine. Victims beg for understanding. I'm done with that. What's left now is something far colder. I walked to my car, opened the door, and sat behind the wheel. I didn't drive. I just sat there, breathing. My hands were steady. My mind was clear. The first phase was complete. But this wasn't over. Not by a long shot. They thought the truth was the endgame. No. The truth was merely the opening move. What comes next? That's where the real game begins. And this time, I hold every card. You see, when you live 2 decades inside someone else's lie, you learn things about people they don't even know about themselves. You learn their habits. You learn their weaknesses. You learn how to break them without ever raising your voice. I didn't go home that night. Not to that house. That house was a mausoleum now, for walls full of memories that weren't real. Instead, I went to the apartment I'd been quietly renting for 6 months. A second place no one knew about. Just in case. Because when you prepare for war, you build fallback positions. I poured myself a drink, neat bourbon, the kind Claire always hated because it smelled like old wood. Fitting, I thought. Old wood burns best. My phone buzzed. Of course, it was Claire. Claire, you didn't have to do that to her. Oh, Claire. The audacity. The gall. She still thought she controlled the board. I stared at the message for a moment, feeling nothing but a dry, cold detachment. No anger. No sadness. Just a tired kind of disgust. I didn't reply. Not yet. See, this is where most men screw up. They react emotionally. They scream. They demand explanations they'll never get. They beg for honesty from people who don't even know what honesty means anymore. But not me. Not anymore. Because you can't negotiate with a person who's built their entire existence on betrayal. You have to dismantle them brick by brick. That's what I'd been doing, quietly, for months. The DNA test was only part of it. There were bank records, hidden accounts, money funneled to a consulting firm run by that same college friend she swore was harmless. I had documentation, receipts, wire transfers, payments she thought I'd never find. Oh, and I found him too. The real father. A corporate parasite named Vincent Hale. Married. 2 kids. A community figure with the kind of reputation that doesn't survive scandal. He and Claire had kept their secret buried for 20 years. Until now. I sipped the bourbon and looked at my notebook. Pages of connections, timelines, leverage points. This wasn't just about infidelity anymore. This was about control. Her betrayal had cost me 20 years. I wasn't about to walk away with nothing. She wanted to build her pretty little empire on my back? Fine. Now I was going to watch it all burn. Piece by piece. Quietly. Legally. Clean. Emily would hate me for a while, maybe forever. But one day, when the fog cleared, she'd see what really happened. She'd see who protected her, even from her own mother's selfishness. The house. The finances. The social circle Claire cherished like oxygen. I was going to pull every thread she thought was untouchable. Because when a man has nothing left to lose, that's when he becomes truly dangerous. The first rule of revenge? You don't announce it. You don't scream your intentions. You let them think they're still in control, that you're the same naive fool they've been manipulating all along. That's exactly what Claire still believed. While she sent her carefully worded texts, trying to guilt me into silence, I moved forward. Quiet. Focused. My first visit was to my attorney, David Langford. A man who didn't advertise on billboards or promise aggressive representation like some discount divorce lawyer. No, David was the kind of attorney people whispered about. The one you hired when you needed precision. When you needed a scalpel instead of a hammer. He didn't ask for much background. He simply leaned forward after I laid out the documentation, the DNA results, the financial records, and the full scope of her deception. When I was done, he simply said, "Do you want to destroy her? Or do you want to obliterate her?" I didn't hesitate. Obliterate. David smiled. Good. Then we proceed carefully. He started by securing copies of every account under Claire's name, joint, separate, and the ones she thought were hidden behind layers of LLCs and business fronts. He subpoenaed financial institutions quietly, leveraging contacts I didn't even know he had. What Claire never understood is that people who cheat rarely cover their tracks as well as they think. And greed always leaves a paper trail. The second front was Vincent Hale. I hired a private investigator, a retired federal agent named McAllister. I gave him Hale's name, his address, and the timeline. Within a week, McAllister came back with a file thick enough to bury both of them. Fraud, hidden assets, tax evasion, corporate misconduct, and buried in there, the affair. Hotel receipts, credit card statements, Phone records that showed calls at all hours of the night when Claire claimed to be at book club or helping a friend. McAllister dropped the folder on my desk like a present. "This is enough to turn his life inside out," he said flatly. "Good," I replied. But I wasn't ready to go nuclear, not yet. Timing was everything. The longer Claire thought I was nursing my wounds, the more careless she became. I knew she was still meeting Vincent, probably whispering sweet reassurances that everything would blow over, that Emily would calm down, that I would move on. That's the beauty of narcissists. They underestimate quiet men. In her mind, she was still playing offense. In reality, she was walking right into the trap I'd spent months building. I took one last look at McAllister's file that night. Their entire world sat there, waiting for me to flip the first domino. And believe me, I was ready. The funny thing about betrayal is how quiet it gets after the bomb drops. You'd think there'd be shouting, screaming, tears, but no. After Emily read that DNA result, after I walked out, silence followed me like a loyal dog. The phone barely rang. The house sat cold and empty. Claire knew better than to try calling me directly now. She was playing defense. Finally. But silence is where I do my best work. I watched as Emily struggled. She didn't call either. I gave her space. She needed time to process the fact that the man who raised her wasn't her biological father. She needed to wrestle with the question every child in her position eventually asks, "Who am I, really?" But that's not a question I could answer for her. That was her mother's sin, not mine. I focused on the next step. Claire's entire existence revolved around two things: status and security. She married me for both. She stayed because I was stable, predictable, safe. She counted on me never digging too deep, never asking the questions she didn't want to answer. And now? Now she was bleeding from both wrists. The financial discovery phase was wrapping up. David, my attorney, sent me updates almost daily. Her offshore accounts are thin, but they exist. The business shell companies are sloppy. Her tax filings, interesting reading, to say the least. He said it like a man enjoying a chess game he knew he couldn't lose. She thought she was clever, David said, almost with pity. But she's an amateur. We're about to gut her without ever stepping into a courtroom. I nodded, but I didn't smile. Because I wasn't doing this for fun. I was doing this because after 20 years of being the family's backbone, I had earned my peace. And I'd take it one brick at a time. My apartment remained my command center. Quiet. Organized. I barely slept, but not from stress, from focus. I spent hours going over the files, the accounts, the timelines. I wanted every angle covered before I made my next move. And then, just when I was about to move into phase 2, my phone lit up. Emily. Her name sat there on the screen like a landmine. I let it ring twice before answering. "Dad?" Her voice was small. Hesitant. "I'm here. I don't know what to say." "You don't have to say anything. I didn't know." The pain in her voice cracked me for a moment. For all the steel I'd wrapped around myself, hearing my daughter, tremble like that, it was the first time I felt the weight of everything that had collapsed. "It's not your fault," I told her softly. "None of this is your fault." There was a pause. She said you're trying to ruin her." I closed my eyes for a second. "No, Emily. She ruined herself. I'm just cleaning up the wreckage." More silence. Then, "Can we meet?" Of course. The war was far from over, but that night, for the first time in weeks, I allowed myself to feel something besides cold fury. The daughter I raised was still mine. And if I played this right, I wouldn't lose her too. We met at a quiet little coffee shop, the kind where people mind their own business. Neutral ground. I picked it on purpose. Emily arrived before me. She looked different. Not physically, but her face carried something new, the weight of betrayal. The kind you don't shake off in a week. When I sat down, she barely made eye contact. "I don't know who to believe anymore," she said softly. "You don't have to choose sides," I replied. "Not yet." She shook her head. "You say that like I won't eventually have to." I sipped my coffee. "Eventually, yes. But you deserve the full picture first." Her lip trembled. I don't understand why she never told me." I studied her face. So much like Claire's, but without the venom. Just confusion. Pain. Because telling you the truth would have meant admitting she destroyed this family before it ever really started. Who's my real father?" she whispered. The question hung between us like poison in the air. I could have avoided it. I could have told her, "It doesn't matter." But that would have been another lie, and I was done protecting Claire from her own filth. "His name is Vincent Hale." Her eyes widened. "The businessman?" I nodded. He and your mother started long before you were born. He was married. He still is. Her breath quickened, her world spinning right in front of me. How long have you known? I paused for a moment. Long enough. Why didn't you tell me sooner? The pain in her voice hit harder than I expected. I leaned forward. Because I loved you too much to let you carry that burden as a child. You were innocent. And frankly, I didn't have proof until recently. Her face crumbled. I wanted to reach across the table and hold her, like when she was little and scraped her knee. But this was a wound I couldn't kiss better. She wiped her tears quickly, trying to regain composure. Does Vincent know about me? I nodded. Oh, he knows. He always knew. They both agreed to hide it. Her jaw clenched. So I'm just some dirty secret. No, I said firmly. You're my daughter. You always were. Don't let their cowardice define you. Her eyes darted away, but I could see the internal war raging behind them. Everything she thought she knew about her life was being ripped apart. Then she whispered something that nearly broke me. I wish you were my real father. I swallowed hard. In every way that matters, I am. We sat in silence for a while, letting it all settle. There was nothing else to say in that moment. She needed time, and I needed to let her have it. Finally, she stood up. I need to think, she whispered. I know. She hugged me tightly, desperately, and then left. I sat there for a long time afterward, staring at my cold coffee. The first fracture had formed. Claire's perfect little narrative was unraveling. And soon, the whole structure would come crashing down. After my meeting with Emily, I knew Claire would feel the shift. She was always good at reading the room, especially when the room was starting to cave in. 2 days later, her text came. Of course it wasn't a phone call. She never liked confrontation when she knew she was exposed. Claire, we need to talk. Face to face. For the first time in a long time, I set the terms. Me. Tomorrow. My apartment. 6 p.m. Come alone. She agreed instantly. Desperation has a way of making people obedient. When she arrived, she walked in like a woman trying to wear confidence like a coat, but you could see the cold biting through. Her hands clenched her designer purse a little too tightly. The same purse I'd bought her last Christmas, back when I was still playing house with a snake. She looked around. So this is where you've been hiding. I let that hang for a second. Not hiding, Claire. Preparing. Her eyes narrowed, but she didn't take the bait. I spoke to Emily, she finally said. Of course you did. She's confused. Hurt. I hope you're proud of yourself. I almost laughed. Proud of myself? That's what she opened with? Proud? No. But I am honest, which is more than you've ever been. Her voice sharpened. You didn't have to drag her into this. She was already in it the moment you opened your legs for another man while wearing my ring. Her face twisted for a second. Rage, guilt, maybe shame, but she quickly masked it with that fake composure she'd perfected over the years. Don't pretend you're some innocent victim, she spat. You were always working. Absent. Cold. There it was. The old playbook. Blame me. Shift the weight. I was building a life for us while you were building your little secret side project with Vincent. Her lips trembled, but she kept her voice low, like she still thought she had the upper hand. Emily doesn't need to know everything. She knows enough, I said. And she'll know more if I decide she should. Her mask slipped for a brief second. Panic flickered in her eyes. That's not fair. Fair. I stood up, slowly, keeping my voice calm. You're standing in front of me, 20 years after you detonated our marriage, and you want to talk about fair? She stayed silent. I walked to my desk, picked up a folder, the one David and McAllister had helped prepare, and laid it gently on the table. Inside is every bank statement, every hotel receipt, every text, every email. Vincent. Offshore accounts. Business fraud. Enough to end not only your reputation but his entire career. She stared at the folder like it was a live grenade. Why are you doing this? She whispered. I locked eyes with her. Because you made me into this, Claire. And because I'm not done yet. She didn't speak. She couldn't. I wasn't here to scream or plead. I was here to watch her world shrink. When she finally turned to leave, her voice was almost a whisper. Please don't destroy me. I smiled, cold, quiet, controlled. You already destroyed yourself. I'm just letting gravity do the rest. She left. Shaken. Pale. Exactly where I wanted her. After Claire left my apartment that night, I didn't sleep. I didn't need to. The game was accelerating now. The problem with people like Claire and Vincent is they always think they're smarter than everyone else. They get comfortable. They assume their secrets are safely buried. But secrets don't stay buried when you know where to dig. McAllister delivered the next piece. Vincent Hale is sweating, he said as he slid the latest file across my desk. Inside were documents I hadn't even asked for yet. Falsified corporate filings, shell companies, off-the-books consulting fees, and worst of all for him, under-the-table payments made directly to Claire during the years she was pretending to be the loving wife. You sure this holds up? I asked. McAllister just nodded. He's got federal crimes in here. Money laundering, tax fraud, corporate embezzlement. If this drops, he's done. His company's done. His name's done. I ran my hand over my jaw, letting the weight of it sink in. I had enough to annihilate both of them, but I wasn't interested in brute force. Not yet. Leak it, McAllister asked. I shook my head. Not yet. I want him to feel it first. 2 days later, I made my move. I requested a private meeting with Vincent. You'd think a man who spent years hiding would refuse. But narcissists have one fatal flaw. They believe they can control every situation. That's why he agreed so quickly. We met at a private business club downtown. The kind of place where men like him pretend they built their fortunes on hard work instead of lies and manipulation. He arrived early, of course, always trying to establish dominance. Mr. Garrison, he greeted me with a politician's smile. Surprised you reached out. I sat down across from him, calm, steady. I figured it was time for a proper conversation, I said. Man to man. He raised an eyebrow. About what, exactly? I smiled, sliding the same file across the polished oak table. The weight of it landed with a soft thud. Vincent glanced down, flipped through the first few pages, and froze. His hand twitched. His face paled ever so slightly. And for the first time, I saw it, fear. You've done your homework, he finally said, voice tight. 20 years is a long time to prepare. He tried to recover, forcing a thin smile. So what now? Blackmail? Extortion? I have powerful friends, you know. I leaned forward slightly. You had powerful friends, I corrected. But when federal charges get involved, they'll scatter like rats. You know it. I know it. He swallowed, his confidence cracking. I don't want your money, Vincent, I said quietly. I don't even want revenge, not in the way you're thinking. He frowned. Then what do you want? I want you to know that I own you now. You breathe because I allow it. You continue your little empire because I haven't taken the leash off yet. One call to the right agency, and your entire life collapses. He shifted uncomfortably, searching for some leverage he didn't have. You think you're the first man to get cheated on? He finally snapped. Grow up. I smiled coldly. Oh, Vincent. I didn't come here as the husband. I came here as the man you both underestimated. I stood, leaving him with his fear, his file, and his rapidly shrinking world. And as I walked out, I could feel the tide turning. The walls were closing in. After my meeting with Vincent, things changed. Not on the surface, no public explosions, no messy scandals, but underneath, the rot was spreading fast. Claire could feel it. That's when the real unraveling began. Her text shifted tone. Gone was the guilt-tripping and fake moral superiority. Now came the panic. Claire, we can work through this. Don't let this destroy everything. Think of Emily. Think of Emily. The same child she lied to for 2 decades. The child she used as a living shield for her betrayal. She was finally starting to realize what I had known from the start. I wasn't playing to hurt her. I was playing to remove her. Cleanly. Completely. The financial pressure came next. David filed the preliminary divorce papers. Full separation of assets. Complete custody filings. Evidence attached. Every cent she thought she had safely tucked away under her name frozen. By the time she read the filing, her attorney must have delivered the reality she never saw coming. She wasn't just facing divorce, she was facing full exposure. Financially, socially, legally. She called that night, the first actual phone call in weeks. Her voice was different this time. Brittle. Fragile. Please, we don't have to do this, she whispered. Yes, Claire. We do. You'll ruin me. No, Claire, I said coldly. You already ruined yourself. I'm just making sure the paperwork reflects it. The silence on the other end stretched out. Then she tried one last play. I'll tell Emily everything, she threatened softly. I'll tell her your side isn't as clean as you make it sound. That actually made me smile. By all means. Tell her. But you might want to read the file I left with my attorney first. The one with every receipt, every text, every bank statement. She'll have all of it. In black and white. Her breathing shifted, shallow, quick. She had no more moves left. You think you're so righteous, she hissed. But you were never enough. That's why I owe. And there it was. The final confession, slipping out like poison. That's why you what, Claire? I interrupted. Her voice cracked. I needed more. I closed my eyes for a moment, not out of pain, but out of sheer disgust. You had everything. You just didn't respect any of it. She hung up after that. The next day, Emily called again. Her voice was steadier this time, but the pain was still there, tucked under every word. She told me everything, she said softly. Or at least, she tried. I figured she might. She tried to make you out as some controlling villain. I waited. Let her speak. But when I asked for proof, something, anything, she couldn't give me any. I stayed quiet. Dad, she whispered, her voice breaking. I don't know how you lived with this for so long. I exhaled slowly. Because I loved you, Emily. That's how. She broke down on the call. I stayed with her quietly, patiently, as she sobbed. And when her voice finally steadied again, she said something that told me exactly where she stood now. I'm with you, Dad. The real power play isn't in private. It's when their carefully built public world starts to crumble. That's where the real pain lies for people like Claire. For years, she wore the perfect suburban mask. Charity events, social committees, ladies who lunch, circles, all smiling as if nothing was rotten underneath. Her friends, or rather, the vultures she called friends, loved her for what she appeared to be. Now, that mask was slipping. The first public fracture came through the financial side. David served formal notice on the family trust. The charitable foundation Claire had funneled funds through gone. Her access revoked. Frozen assets. Board members notified. Rumors began swirling in their social circle almost immediately. I didn't have to say a word. The whispers took care of themselves. One of her old friends, Marissa, called me. That surprised even me. I heard some things, she said cautiously. Is it true? I didn't give her the whole story. I gave her just enough. She's been living two lives for a long time, I said simply. Marissa was silent for a moment. Then she sighed, the way people sigh when they realize they've backed the wrong horse. You always deserved better, she said. No argument there. I knew Marissa wouldn't keep that conversation to herself. She'd spread it like wildfire at the next charity gala. And the beauty of it? Claire wouldn't even be invited to that one. Social exile. That's where it hurts most for people like her. The social ladder they spent decades climbing kicks them off fast when scandal taints the brand. But the real blow was still coming. You see, while Claire scrambled to keep her face intact, Vincent was now fighting his own fires. My investigator leaked key documents, not to the press, not to the government yet, but to Vincent's board. Boardroom politics. The fastest poison in the corporate world. Within 48 hours, internal audits launched. Compliance officers started knocking. Shareholders panicked. Lawyers circled like sharks. By the end of the week, Vincent's golden boy image was gone. And the board? They forced him into a temporary leave of absence. That's corporate code for, we're cutting your throat slowly, and you don't even get to bleed out on your own schedule. His wife, the one he kept while secretly fathering my daughter, filed for separation. Oh yes, the house of cards was folding neatly. And as all this unfolded, I sat quietly, sipping my coffee every morning, reading the headlines that never mentioned my name, because I wasn't stupid enough to leave fingerprints. Emily called me again that weekend. Her voice was stronger now. Steadier. She's losing friends, she said. People won't return her calls. She built her world on lies, I told her. Lies don't hold when the wind picks up. Then she said something I didn't expect. She asked me to help her. That made me pause. And what did you say? Emily's voice was ice cold, colder than I ever thought my daughter could sound. I said she should have thought about that 20 years ago. God help me. In that moment, I couldn't have been more proud. The student had learned. By now, Claire was circling the drain. Her friends were abandoning her, one by one, the same people who used to hang off her every word at charity luncheons and weekend socials. Now, radio silence. People she thought were allies suddenly weren't answering her calls. Invitations dried up overnight. Funny how quickly loyalty evaporates when scandal moves in. But there was one problem Claire never anticipated. She still thought she could negotiate with me. I got an email, not from her, but from her attorney. A settlement proposal. A desperate one. 50% of remaining assets. No public disclosure agreements. Joint custody proposals that kept her name clean. It was almost laughable. She still thought she could walk away with half after 20 years of lies and betrayal. She thought I'd be so eager to avoid drama that I'd sign just to make it all go away quietly. That's how these people think, that after all the destruction, the betrayed party still cares enough to spare them. But here's the truth. By this point, I didn't hate her. I didn't love her. I simply didn't care. Indifference, that's where real power lives. David called me right after receiving the proposal. Do you want me to respond, or shall we let her sweat? Let her sweat, I said calmly. Claire couldn't read silence. Silence terrified her. Meanwhile, McAllister brought me new updates on Vincent's world. He's finished, McAllister said bluntly. His board's turned. The SEC is sniffing around now. There are sealed subpoenas in motion. I nodded. And his wife? I asked. Already lawyering up. She knows about Claire now. You'll be hearing from her attorney soon. That made me smile, not out of malice, but out of sheer satisfaction. Let them cannibalize each other. I didn't need to dirty my hands any further. By now, I rarely heard from Claire directly, but I knew her life was shrinking rapidly. Her credit lines were being revoked. The business fronts she used to shuffle money were collapsing under audit pressure. Even some of the charities she'd used as cover were quietly distancing themselves. And Emily? She was rising above it all. We met for dinner that weekend, just the two of us. Father and daughter. No secrets left between us. She smiled as she sat down, a real smile this time. The weight wasn't gone, but it was lighter now. Every day, she said softly, I realize more and more how much you protected me from. I reached across the table and squeezed her hand. I did what any father would do. No, Dad. You did what only you would do. We ate in peace that night. For the first time in years, it felt like peace was finally within reach. But the war wasn't quite over yet. Not until Claire signed. Not until she was fully cornered. And believe me, that moment was coming fast. Claire finally broke first. Her attorney called David. She's ready to negotiate, David told me. Properly this time. I didn't respond immediately. I wanted her to feel the weight of waiting. She'd had 20 years to enjoy her fantasy life. She could sit in silence for a few more hours. When we finally sat across from each other again, in a sterile, gray mediation room, she looked like a ghost of the woman I married. No designer makeup, no flawless hair. Just exhaustion and fear trying to pretend it was still dignity. For a moment, she almost looked human again. Almost. Her attorney started first. We're prepared to surrender full financial control. Full custody arrangements as previously proposed. My client requests only her personal belongings, some limited spousal maintenance to transition, and of course. David cut him off. There will be no spousal maintenance. The man paused, glanced at Claire nervously. I'm willing to allow her personal belongings, I said calmly. Nothing more. Her lawyer hesitated. He knew better than to fight this. The evidence files were stacked on the table between us like a wall. Every receipt, every message, every lie. Claire tried to break the silence, her voice small but laced with that old familiar edge of entitlement. Do you really have to destroy everything, after all we've shared? I stared at her, hard. You destroyed everything, Claire. I'm just settling the bill. Her lip trembled, but she said nothing more. The signatures came next, dry, clinical. One pen stroke after another, the world she built on deceit officially collapsed. By the time we stood to leave, she reached for one last card. The desperation leaking through now, no longer polished or calculated. Emily, she'll resent you for this. I let that hang in the air for a second, then answered in a voice colder than I even knew I had inside me. No, Claire. She'll respect me for it. And with that, I walked out. No rage. No shouting. No victory speech. Just silence. Because when you win this kind of war, you don't need to gloat. The ruins speak for themselves. The next few days moved like clockwork. The accounts were liquidated and split under the terms I dictated. The properties, including the house Claire once treated like her personal trophy, were transferred or sold off. The charities and boards she'd once flaunted her status in? She was quietly removed from them one after the next. And Vincent? Well, Vincent was now fighting off federal investigators while battling his divorce attorney. His face had finally made the papers, not as a brilliant businessman, but as another greedy fraud falling from grace. McAllister called me after the first news article hit. Publicly? You're not mentioned at all, he said. Just like you wanted. Good, I replied. I never wanted attention. I just wanted the truth to stand. And now, for the first time in 20 years, it finally did. The funny thing about aftermaths? They're quiet. Eerily quiet. No fireworks. No parades. Just silence, and the occasional echo of what used to be. That's where I found myself now, standing in the ruins of the life Claire once built like a house of cards, watching the dust settle. Our house, sold quickly. High-end buyers love a discounted scandal property, especially when the seller is desperate. Claire moved into a modest rental far away from the country club circles she once worshipped. The woman who once threw lavish charity galas was now attending cheap community mixers at local apartment complexes. Poetic, really. Vincent's story continued its public unraveling. Investigations, lawsuits, frozen accounts. His board fed him to the wolves to save themselves. His wife filed a brutal divorce, publicly citing infidelity, financial deceit, and abandonment. The man who once thought he held my life in his hand was now trying to negotiate with prosecutors just to keep out of prison. No plea deal would fix this one. He was toxic, radioactive. I stayed out of the headlines entirely. Like I said from the beginning, subtle revenge is the sweetest. No one needed to know my name. The world thought it was just another corporate scandal and a rich woman's unfortunate marital collapse. The way I wanted it. But my true victory wasn't financial. It was Emily. She came over one night, not as a wounded child anymore, but as a woman who'd seen her world for what it truly was. We sat on my balcony, sharing coffee as the city lights flickered in the distance. "You know," she said, "I used to think you were the weak one." I smiled faintly. "You wouldn't have been wrong. For a long time, I was." "No, you weren't weak," she corrected herself. "You were patient. There's a difference." I didn't respond. I didn't need to. She was finally starting to understand. She exhaled deeply, looking out at the skyline. "Mom's been trying to call me more often lately," she admitted. Always with the same, "I've changed" speech. The same guilt trips. "She will," I said. Because people like her always believe they're victims of circumstance. Emily looked back at me, her voice steady. I told her not to call anymore. I studied her for a moment. The strength in her eyes. The resolve. "That was your decision," I said. "And whatever you choose, I'll support you." She smiled. "You've already done enough, Dad. More than anyone ever has." That word, Dad, still hit me every time. Not because of biology, but because of what it meant. I was never her blood, but I was and always would be her father. And no DNA test could ever change that. Weeks passed. The machine had done its work. Claire had nothing left but her name, and even that was starting to rot. I hadn't heard from her directly in over a month. Then came the knock. Not a phone call. Not a lawyer. Not a text. A knock. I opened the door to find her standing there. She looked smaller, frail, as if the weight of everything she'd spent her life building had finally crushed her spine. No makeup this time. No designer handbag. Just Claire, raw, stripped bare of the lies that used to cover her. "May I come in?" she asked softly. I stared at her for a long moment. The old me, the man I used to be, might have hesitated, maybe even pitied her. But not now. 5 minutes. She stepped inside and sat stiffly on the edge of the couch, as if she didn't even know how to exist in this space anymore. This wasn't her home. Not anymore. I've lost everything," she began. I said nothing. "My friends are gone. The money's gone. Vincent's being indicted. His wife told everyone everything. My job prospects, they're gone too." Her voice trembled. "Do you even care?" I kept my voice calm. Level. "No." That single word hung in the air like an axe. She swallowed, blinking rapidly. "You used to love me." "No," I corrected. "I loved who I thought you were." Tears welled in her eyes, but I felt nothing. She'd spent 20 years draining every ounce of empathy I once had for her. She tried again. "I didn't plan for it to happen this way." "Of course you didn't," I said. "That's why you buried it. That's why you let me raise a child under your lie. That's why you let me build a life while you carried on an affair with a man who now sits in front of federal prosecutors." Her hands clenched together on her lap. She was unraveling right in front of me, and for once, for the first time, she had no play left. Then she played her final, desperate card. "I'm sick." That got my attention, but not in the way she hoped. "Convenient," I said flatly. "It's not a trick," she whispered. "The stress, the legal battles, something's wrong with my heart. The doctors." I cut her off. "Then I suggest you use whatever time you have left to reflect on how you spent the last 20 years. The room went still again. For once, Claire had nothing to say. When she finally stood, defeated, her shoulders slumped. The queen had finally fallen off the board. As she reached the door, she paused. "Do you hate me that much?" she asked. I looked her dead in the eye. "No, Claire. Hating you would still give you space in my head. You're nothing to me now. Nothing." She flinched, visibly. And then she left. Just like that. I stood there for a long time afterward, listening to the silence. The most beautiful silence I'd ever heard. After Claire left that night, I never heard from her again. The funny thing is, when people say, I lost everything, what they really mean is, I finally have to live with myself. Her downfall didn't come from me filing some lawsuit or screaming from rooftops. It came from her own damn reflection. The friends she built her world around? Gone. The money she used to hide her rot? Gone. The man she risked it all for? Facing years behind bars. And me? I slept like a man who'd finally laid down a weight he carried for 2 decades. The divorce finalized quickly after that last meeting. With no money left to fight and no leverage, her attorney couldn't even pretend to negotiate. David handled the last few documents like a surgeon, calm, bloodless, efficient. You're officially free, he told me after filing the final papers. I nodded, but I didn't feel triumphant. That's not how this works. You don't celebrate the end of something like this. You absorb it. You sit with it. You stare at the wreckage, and you quietly let it drift behind you. And Emily? She was stronger every day. She visited often now, not out of obligation, but out of choice. One evening, we sat together again on that same balcony. They say Mom's moved to a small town somewhere upstate, she said. I nodded but said nothing. Where Claire ran to was irrelevant. She couldn't outrun the thing eating her from the inside, the thing she built with her own hands. Emily sipped her tea, looking out at the city. I used to believe people were mostly good, she said quietly. They aren't, I answered simply. Some are. Most aren't. Most people just protect themselves, no matter what it costs. She nodded, digesting it. And you? She asked. Do you regret any of it? Exposing her like that. I turned to face her fully, my voice steady. No. That was the truth. Not because I enjoyed it, but because justice isn't about satisfaction, it's about balance. She took my hand. I know you saved me, Dad. I squeezed it gently. No, I said softly. You saved yourself the moment you chose truth over comfort. I just cleared the path. That night, after she left, I poured myself a drink and sat alone. For 20 years, I lived inside a house built on someone else's betrayal. Now, that house was gone. The ashes scattered. No graves left to visit. No ghosts left to answer to. Just peace. Hard-earned peace. Peace isn't free. You don't walk out of 20 years of betrayal without scars. You don't dismantle an entire life and pretend you're whole. But you do learn to live differently. The first few months after everything settled were strange. My routine, the one I'd followed like a religion for decades, was gone. No more checking accounts. No more second-guessing. No more hiding behind politeness for the sake of a fragile image. Now it was quiet. Almost too quiet. I found myself rediscovering simple things again. Cooking my own meals. Taking long walks. Reading books not because I needed to distract myself, but because I finally had the space to enjoy them. I even started traveling again. Nothing exotic, no 5-star resorts Claire used to demand. Just small towns, quiet drives, places where no one cared who I was. Places where people still looked each other in the eye. Emily visited often. She was still finding her own balance, but she was stronger than most people her age would have been after learning what she did. She started therapy. I encouraged it. She needed someone to help her sort through all the buried landmines her mother planted inside her mind. One evening, while we were having dinner, she said something that stuck with me. You know, when this all started, I thought you were being cruel. I nodded. Most people would. But now, she continued, I understand why you did it the way you did. You weren't trying to destroy her. You were trying to take her power away. That made me pause. Yes, I said quietly. Her power wasn't in what she did. It was in what she hid. Emily understood now fully. She saw through the illusion of keeping the family together. The lie people love to tell themselves to avoid facing what's real. Later that night, after she left, I sat on the balcony again, alone this time. I poured one glass of bourbon, just one, and stared out over the city lights. I wasn't bitter. I wasn't broken. I wasn't angry anymore. But I was changed. There's no returning to who I was before all of this. That man died the moment I opened those DNA results. The man who walked out of the house that day, he was someone entirely new. And oddly enough, that version of me? I respected him. Because that man didn't live under someone else's shadow. Not anymore. Months turned into a year. The storm faded, but the echoes never really disappeared. They just grew quieter. Claire became something like a ghost. Occasionally, her name would surface, in distant conversations, in passing whispers from old acquaintances, but never for long. Her fall from grace was too public, too humiliating for anyone to keep her in polite company. Even her old friends, the ones who used to cling to her designer heels at charity events, had moved on. They found new wives to idolize, new people to orbit around. Vincent? His trial made the news. Federal fraud charges, tax evasion, insider trading. The kind of stuff corporate men think they'll never get caught for until they do. He cut a deal, of course. Men like him always do. But the damage was done. His company was gutted. His reputation? Irreparable. Last I heard, his wife remarried. His children wanted nothing to do with him. Poetic justice. Emily thrived. She finished school, found work doing something she loved, not something that bought status, but something that gave her peace. She even started dating again, though cautiously. Trust isn't easily rebuilt after seeing what betrayal looks like up close. And me? I never remarried. Not because I couldn't, but because I didn't need to. Marriage, for me, was no longer a fairy tale. It was a contract I had fulfilled once, fully, painfully, completely. I had loved. I had given. I had been betrayed. Now I was simply free. One afternoon, as Emily and I walked through a park, she asked the question I always knew would eventually come. Do you miss her? I stopped walking, thought carefully before answering. I don't miss the person she was, I said slowly. I miss the person I believed she was. Emily nodded, understanding far more than most people her age should ever have to. That version of her never existed, she said softly. No, I agreed. It never did. We stood there for a while, just watching families and couples pass by. Some happy, some pretending, some probably living the exact lie I once lived inside. Do you ever feel like you wasted all those years? She finally asked. I exhaled slowly. That one stung a little. I used to, I admitted, but not anymore. Why? Because I got you out of it, I said, turning toward her. You were never a waste. Her eyes glistened, and she smiled through it. And that was the truth. If my only reward for enduring 20 years of betrayal was raising Emily into the woman standing beside me now, then so be it. It was enough. Time does something strange to wounds like these. They don't close entirely. They just scar over. You stop bleeding. You stop flinching. But you always carry it. One afternoon, I received a letter. No return address. The handwriting was familiar, too familiar. Claire. I sat at my desk for a few minutes before opening it. Not because I was nervous, but because I already knew what was inside. Another attempt. Inside was exactly what I expected, carefully chosen words meant to sound sincere, but underneath, still woven with her old fabric of manipulation. I know I made terrible mistakes. I've lost everything. I've had time to reflect. If there's any part of you that can forgive for Emily's sake, I would welcome the chance to rebuild some kind of peace between us. There it was. Not a full apology. Not true accountability. Just another self-serving plea dressed up as contrition. Forgiveness. That word always seems to come last, after they've lost power, after the consequences have hit, after there's nothing left for them to take. Then suddenly they find the language of regret. I folded the letter and placed it back in the envelope. Then I burned it. Not out of rage, but because some things are better reduced to ash. Like the version of her I once loved. Like the life we pretended to have. She had her chance at mercy. She spent it. A few nights later, Emily came by for dinner. We sat on the balcony again, our usual spot now. As we ate, she asked quietly, "Have you heard from her?" I sipped my drink before answering. Yes. And she wants forgiveness. Emily studied me carefully. She wasn't a little girl anymore. She could see right through people now. She knew what that request really meant. Did you respond? I shook my head. There's nothing left to say. She nodded. I'm glad. We clinked our glasses together, not in celebration, but in quiet understanding. The war was long over. The ruins had settled. The dust finally stayed down. But there's one thing people like Claire never understand and never will. Closure isn't given. Closure is earned. And sometimes, the only closure is silence.